we're talking to people who discovered that unexpected detours in life directed them to situations in life even greater than they could have ever imagined. My next guest says he sacrificed for years to reach his dream of becoming a surgeon. But when he finally reached his goal, he was shocked to realize it wasn't what he wanted after all. I know, think about that. Anthony Chin-Quee is now a former surgeon and a new author, confronting his journey in his beautiful memoir, I Can't Save You. By the way, this book has been named one of the best books of April by the Washington Post for its gripping and funny stories about facing his assumptions, mistakes, and what he wishes people had told him. The opening chapter sets the tone as he describes how, despite being a successful Harvard-educated doctor, his life, as he says, is a mess. He writes, "What I'm trying to say is I feel asphyxiated, I think. Like there's a vice around every muscle in my body, in every corner of my mind, in every twitch or stretch of idea or hope, the crank spins and the jaw squeeze tighter. And that's a run-on sentence with a mediocre mix of metaphors. Great start," he writes. Essence Magazine calls it a book you must read. Please welcome new author that you'll be talking a lot about, Anthony Chin-Quee. Anthony Chin-Quee, you are being celebrated. I have to tell you, this book is so beautiful. Just start with the title, I Can't Save You. A surgeon saying that would normally send us in panic mode. But this story really is about that pressure to save a life and find your life at the same time.
Yes, exactly. I mean, just like you said, this would, hearing any doctor say, I can't save you, should send you running for the hills. But it's really about the journeys that are going on inside. A lot of us, especially in the medical community, feel like there's so much of ourselves that we cannot share. So much that gets overshadowed and taken over by our jobs. And when we forget or push down those parts of us, then we go to some pretty unexpected and sometimes very dark places.
Well, one of the places in your life where you start really is your relationship with your father, Jamaican Chinese heritage.
Yes.
We always have a lot of Caribbeans in our audience, and people Caribbean ancestry, and I love that you talk about that kind of pressure of being this child from this background. You said you never felt called to be a doctor, but felt funneled into its path. You wrote, if you're a super smart kid, a bunch of upwardly mobile Jamaicans and Trinidadians will encourage you to be either a doctor or a lawyer. And you reference, like my currently disbarred father.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, and a lot of us here understand that. And I kind of thought a lot about this when I was writing. Our parents and sometimes our grandparents who are coming from places outside of the States, they did the riskiest and most, really exciting but scariest thing they could think of by leaving everything they knew to come to this new place for opportunity. And all they want for their kids is for you to never have to risk in that way, you know?
That's so beautifully put.
And so, we have in our heads these we have in our heads these like achievement-oriented goals that ultimately aren't risky if you can get on the train. So being a doctor is one of those. If you're smart enough, if you pass the tests, you can get on that train, which leads you, 10 years into the future. Every next step is prescribed. There's not a lot of risk once you're in. And
which is a fascinating detail to think, you're on the track, you're a smart kid, you go to Harvard, you're in medical school, so you're on the track. It's not risky, but it's hard.
Yes, and it's so funny because in the end, we are the children of our parents, right? Like that, if we're coming from risk-taking stock, there's only so much you can expect we won't want to take a risk. You know, like we're gonna want to try new things. We're gonna want to spread out and be creative and get weird.
But you were suppressing all of that because you had a
Yeah.
love of arts, you had a love of music, you had all of these other passions, but your job and responsibility, you felt, was to stay on track,
Yes.
not disappoint my mom, not disappoint my family, not do what I want to do. So you were, as you detail in this book, you'd fallen into depression. You were struggling. You were struggling to stay afloat.
Yeah, and I think depression is an interesting thing.
It is.
Because
I'm talking to a surgeon, a doctor about it. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. You know, going through medicine and all the training, you learn how to diagnose depression and other mental illnesses and struggles. But the feelings of depression, the feelings of going through those times are still very foreign to you. Those aren't in the books. And so when I was writing this, I know that, you know, you can go on Google and you can type in what are the symptoms of depression, but what I wanted to get across was, how does every stage of that feel? How does it feel when you are chronically depressed and maybe you don't even know it? And so the pieces of depression sort of weave their way into your personality and your coping mechanisms. And so, you know, before you get to that rock bottom where people know, like, oh, that person's depressed, they're like catatonic, can't get out of bed, you may be doing a lot of other things that to others seem pretty fun. You know, you may be drinking a whole lot. You may be dating people who also are going through something similar, and you kind of gravitate towards those folks. Broken people sort of attract each other in that way. And then once you get to the point that you're really struggling to move, like physically, like I remember, you know, when things were really bad, you get to the point where it takes an hour to type a 5-word text message.
Which is so interesting because here again, you have this added pressure while you're dealing with your mental health struggle of people thinking this surgeon, this brilliant surgeon, can save me. And when we come back, why Anthony says he found power in naming his struggles and how that led him to an unexpected career, not as a surgeon. Wait until you find out what he does next.
I woke up one morning years ago desperately compelled to find control and balance inside my head, while outside of it, my world swirled in chaos. And in this pursuit, I found a deceptively simple truth. My identity and my place in the world are determined by me.
Wow, welcome back. That was an excerpt from I Can't Save You, the memoir the Washington Post calls one of the best books of the month. We are back with the author, former surgeon Anthony Chin-Quee, who is opening up about his experience becoming a doctor, the toll it took on his life, and where he is now. Anthony, in the book, you also have this letter that I told you I sobbed when I read this. It's a letter to a young bird. You say, "Good morning, young one. I've watched you, terrified to breathe, but in your first act of trust, pulling this world's air into your burning chest to announce your arrival." And it goes on, and it's so beautifully written. But you said that was, when you wrote that, this is when you're finding yourself on the other side. You'd been a surgeon, hours and hours of being a resident, hours and hours of putting in the work to be a surgeon. But you are now being reborn as something else.
Yeah, when like I was telling you, when I wrote that poem, this is actually the first thing I ever wrote for this book. And it was a long time ago, and it was back when I was having a really tough time. I was in the middle of this massive depressive episode. I had been asked to leave my program for a while because I'd failed some tests I really shouldn't have failed, and was really searching for a reason to keep going. And I remembered that I've always loved to tell stories.
Oh, wow.
You know, in all different mediums. I used to sing and dance and act and play music, all that sort of stuff. But my job had kind of stomped it out of me, the whole journey. Really.
The idea that, you're like something you love is stomped out of you. I mean, that is, even just the way you word it, I know a lot of people, that's the fear, that the life you wanted, you didn't get that shot. And so in an unexpected turn, because of the tests and all of these things, you thought, okay, let me rebuild myself. And now you're like major. You started writing for TV shows. You're a writer for The Resident, the Fox medical drama. But that's not all. Anthony became a medical advisor for Grey's Anatomy. And then, that's not all. Take a look at this cameo on screen.
Oh, okay. The ICU is this way.
Oh, God, no. You got cramp in
But if we go in this direction, I can show you our new MRI on the way.
Look, there you are. First of all, looking at that scene, I'm happy you're not a surgeon anymore. I was like, what is that? I mean, talk about a change in direction.
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel? Well, when you told people who would say, you knew these folks would say, come on, man, you're a surgeon. There are people who would give anything to be a surgeon. Mm-hmm. And you say, but it's not what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. I remember after training finished and I had my first job and had a good salary, had good colleagues, was doing surgery, was doing clinic, everything was just fine.
Yeah.
You know? And I realized that fine wasn't enough. You know, there were things that I knew that I loved, that I needed. And I knew that, you know, my journey to that point through medicine, all that stuff, it wasn't a waste. Mm-hmm. But it was a new jumping off point that I didn't realize I had there. And there had to be a way for me to combine my life experience to that point with the things I knew I really was passionate about and needed to survive. And so to be able to be an artist now, having gone through everything that I've gone through is such a blessing, and I'm just having the best time.
Oh my gosh. Well, the memoir is beautiful. I Can't Save You, Anthony Chin-Quee's book. Thank you so much for joining us. And I can't wait to see you more on screen. It's a natural. You're a natural.